Hello, thank you for joining us here today for the first in our very special series of podcasts looking at the new rules for Arab wealth. Joining us here today is مريم المنصوري, board member of the UAE Circular Economy Council, along with, I believe, 8 other titles and an inspiring Emirati entrepreneur in her own right. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Before we get started here today, I obviously must extend thanks to our special sponsor, without whom it would be impossible to put together this podcast. I'm, of course, talking about our partners at Tickmill. Tickmill, thank you for helping us out. Active in over 180 countries, Tickmill itself is a global multi-asset broker trusted by traders worldwide, who themselves also recently won a title being named the most competitive broker. Appreciate your support. Thank you very much, Tickmill. So, مريم, again, thank you for joining us here today. As I said, the title of the podcast is The New Rules for Arab Wealth. And obviously, in a world that's more tumultuous than ever before, I thought it'd be interesting if we could just start with what your perspective is of the Arab wealth media landscape, but also what that looks like from a national policy standpoint and to the private sector.
Of course. I think Arab wealth has grown over the last 3 to 4 decades in certain industries. You'd look at retail, you'd look at extended services in oil and gas, and everyone's favorite, real estate. But moving into maybe a closer look post-COVID, a lot of Arab families have diversified where they invest in. A lot of their wealth has went into encouraging newer sectors. We have a few prominent Arab families that have entered the renewable energy sector. We have some that have entered the financial sectors abroad. And so it's interesting seeing how Arab families are diversifying, but at the same time, there is a gap of knowledge, which presents opportunities. And there is a few, let's say, trends that are going to shape and impact how the 3rd, 4th, and 5th generations really carry that. Many young Arabs are entering the private sector, which is great, either as full-time jobs or as entrepreneurs, such as myself. So it's more of choosing industries that have either been tapped into previously or new, and looking at how leading Arabic families will set or pave the way in that perspective too.
You mentioned one phrase there, which I think would be the most interesting thread to pull on first, and that's this idea of there being a lack of knowledge. When you mean a lack of knowledge, do you mean a lack of knowledge when it comes to financial markets, to trading, to retail investing? Is that the kind of thing that you're referring to?
Yeah. I mean, we started off, if I just look at the UAE, men did a lot of the heavy investing on behalf of their families. And today you find a lot of businesswomen due to how the UAE has shaped, empowering women, enabling them, and really putting them at the forefront of a lot of the decision making. Last year alone, I believe, or start of this year in January, was the rule implementation of having a female board member in all listed financial entities. And so you can only imagine, as women coming from households that are conservative, we would invest in gold. We would only buy gold, and that's what our mothers and grandmothers taught us to do. And it's like, okay, we have a commodity at home, which is gold. But now when you're a businesswoman, or let's say when you're looking to secure wealth or build wealth for your family, it's like, how do I trade in the futures of gold? How do I get into the stock markets? Who do I trust and who do I not trust? I studied finance in university, and my professors would always go like, oh, you need to do your own homework and due diligence. But there's so much to read on the internet. And so what do I read? Where do I read? How do I analyze it? Who do I hire as an advisor? Do I need an advisor? And so that's the gap that I'm talking about. There are so many unanswered questions. We're used to the stock markets as a stock alone on itself. And a lot of the stocks that Arab families today feel comfortable trading in are the national stocks. And of course, that serves as a foundational piece of wealth diversification and portfolio of building local, let's say, stability. But as we all know, the opportunity lies in the stock markets abroad and in the financial markets abroad, because larger companies, more sectors, the indices are based out of there, the futures market, mainly the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. And so how do we reflect that knowledge here in the UAE? And we speak the language of the Arabic investor. Today, a lot of families made their wealth from real estate and construction. But how much will we build? At the end of the day, land is finite. And so how do the third and fourth generation start becoming more creative in what to do, how to do it? Physical assets are great and commodities, but it's more of how do I take advantage of the market? How do I enter the financial space in a way where I understand risk and also understand the risk appetite that my family has or that my principals are willing to entertain for me to jump into? Because even when you look at investing into private equity, you'll have to have a threshold of patience. Depends on the industry. If you have appetite for that industry, AI is something huge now. Everyone wants to get into data centers, into the chips, into energy and copper, etc. But again, we're all going after the same thing. And so how do we continue to preserve our initial industries that we've all set up, including hospitality, which is great, and it's something that the UAE is phenomenal at, but also at the same time, seeing what's happening abroad and trying to tap into that opportunity and then reflect it back as knowledge here in-house.
In addition to your role, as I previously stated, the UAE Circular Economy Council, there's another one of your astonishing 8 titles, which I actually believe is more about the youth and about Emirati youth. Do you see the kind of interest in markets and in understanding how to engage with this sort of financial products that you're mentioning? Do you see that happening more so than perhaps previously?
Yes. A lot of youth are now entering the crypto space, foreign exchange. So they would trade other currencies. There is a lot of people that have, or youth that when I ask them, they're like, oh, we lost all of our money because we didn't know how to, when to get out of our positions. And that's the knowledge that I'm talking about. Because as an example, at university, we used to trade or fake trade on, just on simulations.
For practice.
Exactly, for practice. But we would submit our positions every other week to our professors. And of course, our professors would want us to make us feel good about ourselves and about our decisions, but they were all horrible. And it's how do we get the younger generation or even those that are entering business now to get into the financial markets? Because my role in the Emirates Youth Entrepreneurship Council, I'm surrounded by amazing entrepreneurs that have really entered various industries, from jewelry, from crowdfunding for real estate purchases, from trying to bridge logistical challenges for home businesses in the far south of the UAE to bring it to markets. So there's a lot of creativity. But as an entrepreneur, your one key voice in your head is always make money, make money, make money. And when you start your own business, there's a risk of you not having money, or you losing money, or you putting your own money for hiring someone or advertising your product or R&D, etc. And so it's critical for anyone wanting to start a new business to still have a safety deposit, and that can always be stocks. It can be something from the financial markets. It can be owning an apartment that helps have a cash flow of rent coming in. Because as an entrepreneur, while your appetite for risk is somewhat very high, such as myself, you still need that stability of financial income. And to be very honest, a lot of the Emirati youth that I've met that have entered the crypto and the other financial products are mainly men, because they're we do want to become entrepreneurs and, for an example, not have full-time jobs.
Oh, that's fascinating. So there's a real gender divide.
There's a gender divide, yes. Even when you talk about the financial space, I've co-founded my own hedge fund with a partner, and I'm the first Emirati to do that.
As for everyone counting, that's title number 3.
That's title number 3. But it's more of, it kind of surprised me when the regulators were like, oh, it's the first time that an Emirati owns owns a financial vehicle. And when I started to think why, in the financial space, the UAE is a great supplier of finance. I mean, from an investment perspective, we have some of the largest funds over here, and Abu Dhabi is known to be the capital of capital. But then think about 50 years down the line when we need to demand funds. And so what are the financial products that are going to be UAE based and UAE born? One of my, things that I take pride in, and I'm very fortunate to start off my entrepreneurial career in, is starting Rebound. And Rebound is a B2B marketplace for recycled materials. When we started that, my team and I, explaining it to the market was like speaking gibberish. No one understood what we were saying. I had my marketing colleagues always tell me, مريم, you're too technical. You need to, take it down a notch. And so entering these new spaces, whether it's circularity of materials and making money out of waste internationally, treating it like a commodity, whether it's setting up a financial vehicle and encouraging people to invest in it, it's all new. And so the appetite of Arabs and the Arab wealth in this region is more of, we find more security in things that we're used to. We might allocate like a bit of risk to these new companies or new industries that are starting to start. But I believe a few years down the line, and they'll become the most infiltrate, like the industries that are most sought after, because I believe that the younger generation that's currently in university or graduating high school is going to have a much higher risk appetite, and they're going to be very tech savvy, that it's going to take them 1 month to do maybe what I did in 1 year. I see it in my younger siblings themselves. They're really fast. And I'm just like, wow, 10 years from now, I think the Arab-based and Arab-founded companies are going to be just as attractive, if not more attractive, than those that we hear about in the Silicon Valley and other areas.
I'm so glad you mentioned Rebound, because it, of course, turns us to a really fascinating conversation. The name of this podcast, again, is The New Rules. And Rebound itself is an idea that's founded quite heavily in the green economy and sustainability and obviously the circular economy. Mm-hmm. How important are those trends, do you think, to young Arabs when it comes to the subject matter of investing, of trading? Do they take into account those ideas of sustainability when it comes to how they choose their investments?
Definitely. I think today when I meet a lot of family members that, for an example, are in the automotive industry or in the real estate industry or construction, they always talk about, we've invested, for an example, in this XYZ technology that would help us preserve cooling in our buildings more, or like in this paint, or, we want to reduce using this type of material, or we're trying to become more conscious and deploying softwares that help us reduce our food waste. That is, whether it's conscious or subconscious mind speaking, from an investor perspective, it shows that they're becoming more sustainable. Over the last 1.5 to 2 years, the UAE has done an amazing job in behavioral nudging. I'm not sure whether people really pick it up or not, but because I'm in the space for one, I do see it. I see that with a country perspective, it's like they're trying to add more diversified bins rather than just one. They're trying to educate kids to reuse and to, use things that are more environmentally friendly. We're starting to see more recyclable and green labels. The government is starting to really prioritize circularity. We've seen a series of, for an example, the Investopia Roadshow that the Ministry of Economy and Tourism hosts every year. A lot of that also involves circular investors and investments. So it is picking up from, and it's not just the youth that are advocating for it, it's also those on a board level, because financially, you'll have to spend money now. So from a CFO perspective, the CFO does need to allocate budget today. It's much better than allocating it in 5 years, because the NPV of doing it today would be positive. If you wait until 5 years down the line to retrofit your buildings or your new assets, you're pretty much going to pay a hefty amount. Sustainability as a term has been abused previously in green.
Couldn't agree more.
A lot. And just going back to the fundamental meaning of sustainability means you sustain something at the level that it is at the moment, or you increase it. And so how do we live sustainably? It's by making sure that we pass on our environment to the next generation the same way that we found it. And so today, it shocks me when I still see people littering. It annoys me, it frustrates me, and like I actually go up to people and tell them, like, don't do that. There's a bin. You can walk. In Japan, there are no bins on the on the walkway. So I remember when I was in Japan, I used to carry all of my waste throughout the day, and I have to wait until I get to the hotel and separate my waste there. And that's the right way of doing it. Why would we want to buy 50 shirts of like the same color instead of just buying one that can last me for 2 years instead of fast fashion? Shockingly, only 17% of people in the UAE think that textile waste, for an example, is an issue. The rest believe that fast fashion is great and that it's helping people just access more options. So it's all about the mentality.
I mean, you're quite right. Obviously, the UAE has done some incredible work in terms of encouraging the circular economy and the effort that it has made into sustainability. But help connect the dots for me here, though. From those actions, how do we connect to this idea of sustainability as an investment choice? What does that actually look like? Other than your own choice to tell people to pick up their own litter, how does it work in your financial space, in your own personal finances?
From connecting the dots perspective, I think every financial investor needs to consider his or her assets. And so if you're investing in construction or real estate, which is what a lot of the Arabs invest in, how much will it cost me to reconstruct or to retrofit? What are the technologies that I invest in today, which will save me money tomorrow, versus if I just go for the current linear economy options that will not do me any good in 5, 8, 10 years down the line, or when I come to resell the asset at hand. If it's about energy, there's a lot of waste that comes from the typical energy sectors today, and it's a cost on the operational side of things. So when we look at the OPEX budget, it's like, how do I find a sustainable choice that will help me reduce this payment 2 to 3 years down the line if I start today, and basically take it out as a cost and turn it into revenue. Sustainability as a concept can be implemented in many different ways, but where investors find financial gains and returns is in the circularity. And I'll mention a new economy, or a new term economy, which I previously picked up from His Excellency Abdullah bin Tog, where he talks about the butterfly economy. And he's like, so just like a butterfly, one side of the butterfly is more of like reduce, recycle, etc. But then the other is regenerating. And this is when we talk about the finite supply that we have on our earth today. All industries and all investments are based on resources and critical resources. And if we look at the most important resource that we have on our planet today, it's sand. And sand is the cheapest to get, to recycle, to resell. Yet all of our phones and every electronic device we touch, or pretty much everything around us, has a sand and silica component in it. From an investment perspective, how can I circulate these raw materials? Countries have built their wealth based on the virgin materials that their country have. But a smart investor today would understand, how can I make the most out of the circulated materials, which I'm fortunate enough to have from the imported virgin materials. So if I'm building a data center, 30, 40 years down the line, if I need to disassemble it, how much money would it bring me, instead of me investing or like paying to dismantle it? What if it's circulated into something else? What if I can, from a retail perspective, start investing in mono-material clothes, because then it would be, people would pay my customers more to pick up a 100% cotton shirt rather than a 30% cotton, 70% polyester, because that 100% cotton shirt would be worth more. From a decision-making perspective, again, the gap, because these are new economies and they're terminologies that have not been looked at before because it's new. people only today have realized the problems that landfills bring to the country. And that's why a lot of people are starting to talk about sustainability in their investment strategy. But it's very basic math. It's looking at the asset and the commodity that that asset holds. And it's like, if I regenerate it or recirculate it, how much would it create of value for my investment portfolio? And what do I need to do in order to tap into that? And who do I need to work with? Because if you look at the fundamental change makers, they're small and medium enterprises, and they're the recyclers. So large family offices, large asset managers can simply just work with them because they're the companies that hold the most valuable technical knowledge. It's not going to be the typical consultant office that you're used to visiting on like the 40th floor. So it's all new. And I'm sure from the exposure you've had with anyone that invests or takes financial decisions, they're used to measuring certain components, like what's your EBITDA, what's the IRR, when are you breaking even. They don't look at the material side of things.
The sustainable cost, if you will.
The sustainable cost. It upsets me from a global perspective that people give themselves a pat on the shoulder if they do a beach cleanup. Like, you're not doing anything.
The impact is negligible.
Impact is like, it's nothing. You need to be sustainable as a person. It starts from the house. It starts as an individual. When you practice it as an individual, only then can you bring it to the office, to the boardroom, and to your financial decisions. It doesn't harm anyone to just add an extra bag at home and put all of the, for an example, plastic containers in it, and then separate the food waste. We talk about investments. Anyone in health and pharma would understand that the reason why there's a lot of new viruses, or let's say continuous health issues in people, it's because the air around us is not that great. And that's why today you have this industry of air purifiers, air technologies. Where did they come from? They came from the fact that there's pollution around us. How do we detect that pollution? And what causes pollution? It's greenhouse gases. And then you go back to this whole sustainability fundamental, which has been so abused previously. And only now are certain investors starting to think, it's interesting. It
is in itself, to a certain degree, a circle.
It is. It's always a circle. And that's why, we actually have a frame in the office that says think in circles, because literally people need to think in circles. If you look at the air conditioning industry, for instance, there's this hype online of, the human body carries like an ocean of microplastics. It doesn't. The most detrimental, let's say, external thing in our body is lead. And lead comes mainly from ACs, okay? So now you have this new technology, or these new companies that are starting to replace AC, your bedroom setting. Instead of sleeping with the AC on, your bed either heats or cools the mattress. Like, look at how entrepreneurs are thinking to combat. And so this is where, so if you look at these technologies, the investors behind them are the investors that are starting to pick up the term sustainability. All the others who like sponsor a beach cleanup, for me, that's like, you need to put in another 0 or 2 to your budget to get into it.
Do more than just an interesting headline. So look, we've talked a lot already about the sort of micro level, what you have to do individually, what that might look like from an individual investor standpoint. Last couple of questions for you here today. I want to turn to this macro idea. You touched on it a little bit earlier about perhaps the Arab world's place in the world in the future when it comes to being a hub of sustainable finance, a hub for sustainable technology. Mm-hmm. Where do you think the UAE and more broadly the Arab world will be in the next 10 to 15, 20 years?
I think the Arab world is going to be the meeting point of all things circularity because of the geographical, state or stage that it's at. But at the same time, if I just look at the UAE, our CEPA agreements with other countries and let's say the preferences that we have with a lot of important regions such as Africa, such as Europe, such as the Far East, of re-importing and exporting, because we're a global trade hub and our ports, etc. So that's going to generate a lot of material flows. And so how do we capture these material flows and turn them into something more valuable? The Arab world is attracting a lot of, let's say, residents and expats to come live. That means an increase in automotive, because our countries are not built a lot for being a walkable district because of our weather. Inshallah, it changes soon. But, but when you talk about the automotive industry and you see how many new car companies are coming to set up in our countries, what happens to the cars later, the batteries, the engines, and it's all made out of valuable precious metal, glass, and different materials. So from an investment and country level perspective, I do see the Arab world becoming the hub for all industries, but in a specific, let's say in a specific segment. For instance, if we take the agricultural business and the food business, food is very important, and food security, and a lot of the Arab countries have set that as a priority at the forefront of their decision making. But when you look at, the possibilities of planting and growing things, we don't have a lot of arable land. So it's more on food processing and manufacturing rather than actually growing a lot of crops, unless it's vertical farming. So maybe from a specialization perspective, let's say we might be fortunate to specialize in food processing rather than just growing crop to table. It's going to be more costly. And so we don't want to, when you look at the basics of economies and economies of scale, you don't want to replicate everything. And I think this is what the Arab countries and leaders are focusing on. They don't want to take away and replicate from other regions. They just want to matchmake. And this is what we see works when you bring A and B together and give them space. This is what at least I see the UAE is doing. It's providing a lot of, even if you look at the financial sector, we have a lot of wealth managers and family offices moving from abroad, setting up here. Why? Because we've enabled the dual license, we've enabled, the fact that people are comfortable with certain laws to be practiced at, and we've built our systems based on that.
Is the UAE the world's Mejlis?
I'd like to believe so. I think the UAE, I've studied in an international school and international setting, so I've never been in an area where it's just Emiratis. Maybe just at my house, even, not so much because my friends are always over, but our founding fathers built the country and joined the cities on a very, very basic principle. It's that everyone is welcome. And it was always built on tolerance. So we started with it being a Mejlis for all, for people to just live and work with us and help us build our country. But today, when you talk about the most important capital any country can have is human capital. Financials are there, hopefully, and if not, they can somewhat come and reach the country. But the human capital and the brain powers and talent is really what differentiates economies and countries, and why living in one area is better than the other. The fact that we're fortunate enough to be home to many, many, many nationalities, I don't even know what the last number was, gives us that strategic, or let's say unique advantage and USP for why all industries are over here. Even if operationally they're not here, a lot of people set up their HQs and family offices, except why? Because the country is very friendly and understanding, even on the financial side, to how someone wants their wealth managed. And if you look at a lot of the UAE brands, they're not done by Emiratis. It's other nationalities that have helped invest and build it. And it's because the UAE provides, an empty canvas. Back in Expo, when Dubai hosted Expo, the UAE pavilion was termed as the land of dreamers who do. That's exactly what it is. And that's why today you have an entrepreneur such as myself, because we have grown up hearing our leaders telling us nothing's impossible. So there is nothing stopping us, really.
Wow, that's a fantastic anecdote. And I have just one more question for you today. And honestly, this is more for me than it is for anyone else listening. And it's about advice. Combating this issue that you talked about earlier, which is this sort of information overload when it comes to understanding how to make your own personal financial decisions. What kind of advice would you give to people who are encountering the same issue? How would you go about overcoming it and making sure that you're making decisions that you think you would be happy with?
Everyone needs to start asking themselves, what does comfort look like when they have a family? It's not about being comfortable alone. It's about being able to provide, whether you're a woman or a man. Provide for yourself, for your family, for your dog, whatever it is. And so when you understand what comfort looks like, you might say, I'm comfortable just getting a monthly allowance, and that's fine. Can I save from that monthly allowance and turn it into a running cash flow that I just don't need to look at? Do I need to go to a financial advisor, or can I just go to my bank, local bank, and understand what kind of stocks or bonds can I put my money in and get safe returns? There are a lot of options where you get a single-digit return on, and that's available in abundance. So there's a lot of options available versus maybe shaking it up a bit and being risky and going for the double-digit returns. And that's where you enter commodities. That's where you enter private equity and financial markets. It's all about the person's appetite. Not everyone's a risk taker, and that's completely fine. But it's all about knowing and understanding yourself and how much you're comfortable giving up short term to gain on the long term.
مريم, it only exists for me to thank you very much for your contribution and time here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
And also to thank our partners again at Tickmill, who without them, none of this would have been possible. Thank you very much, Tickmill. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you in our next episode. Thank you very much.